What is going on, guys? My name is Landon. Today, I'm bringing you guys yet again another video, and for today's video, we are talking about roster changes, what's going on with the Call of Duty scene right now. It is that time of season. It is the time to be jolly. Not really. I'm honestly not that big of roster changes in some ways, but it is destined to happen. There's a lot of teams who have already kind of rumored things happening, and as far as the European scene goes, they've already been in the midst of a number of different changes, which we might talk about for another video potentially. So today I'm going to be giving you guys a small list of players to kind of be looking out for as far as league players, but today we're going to be focusing a lot on players who could be making an impact and who are currently free agents who could be swapping around and making it onto these teams. So as you guys can see now on your screens, the list of players at the bottom. This is not all of their players, of course, but you do have to mention some of these guys. As far as Team Liquid goes, their full team, being Merc, Burn, Study, and Apathy. TK being Neslo, Sharp, Gunjar, and Theory. Cloud9 Eclipse being Dino, Silly, Assault, and Swarly. And from CLG, you do have Accuracy, Methods, Perplexed, and Felony. Along with some others, you have BL Fire, you have Proofy, Embos, Khalifa, you have Sinful, you do have Miyagi. I mean, you have a number of different guys. Cyborg, I mean, there's so many guys that I could put on this list that I really wouldn't be able to fill it up with, to be honest, because there are so many guys who are out there. I guarantee you, if any of these guys who are on a certain team, because you have to keep in mind this as well, Season 1 was a big enough deal to where you could at least wait till Season 2 to even have a roster, because you do have that opportunity to get into Season 2. This is the last season. There's no more Black Ops 3 Call of Duty World League season. This is the last one. There isn't a Stage 3. There isn't a Season 3 that's going to happen magically. That's not going to happen. So this is your last opportunity to get in the Call of Duty World League. If you haven't been already, or if you got out of the Call of Duty World League, this is your last opportunity. So there's not going to be any Team Liquids walking around. There's not going to be any groups of talented rosters who are sticking together for nothing. Because, I mean, granted, you do have Call of Duty Championships that's at the end of the year, but trying to grind out for that, which we don't even have any information on that yet. I mean, what do you really fight? You're fighting for nothing, really. You're fighting for something that you don't know enough about. So, at least in my opinion, as far as a lot of these teams go, if any of these guys, and I mean any of these guys, get an offer, I guarantee you they're going to take it. Sharp posted a video, and of course he's kind of been in the talks of retiring, as well as Burns has, as well as Merc has, but specifically in his video kind of talking about the TK situation of them actually not making it through relegation, because all these teams obviously are not in Season 2. Team Liquid and Cloud9 Eclipse being the two challenge teams who did not make it into Stage 2, H2K beating Team Liquid, and DT beating C9 Eclipse, and also TK who ended up losing to King Poppy, and as well as CLG who ended up losing to the regular Cloud9 team. So with that, you can basically guarantee, and like I said, when I was going back to Sharp's videos, he said that if anyone on TK, and he kind of just said this in general, but if anyone who did not make it into this season gets an offer, they're going to take it. So that means under certain circumstances, and as far as we know, if King Poppy has been bought out by some of these major organizations, as we know of yet, because certain things can happen. You know, so let's just say this. Let's say figuratively, TK gets King Poppy's spot, and then since 2 spots are guaranteed, they can get rid of 2 players and put 2 TK players back in there. Now, and that's not guaranteed. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying the potential for something like that to happen is a possibility. So I want everyone to kind of have that in the back of their minds here. So with that, you do have to take into consideration the fact that all these players are very destined. They want to be in this season, and it's really sad to see this amount of players listed that are not going to be in this season. I mean, you look at all these veterans, at least a lot of these guys being veterans, who aren't in this next season is absolutely incredible to me, to be completely honest with you. However, we do move on, and we do digress, as we'll go ahead and talk about some of the players we're looking out for. First off, starting with Team Liquid, who to me probably have the most valuable set of players to be looking at. To me, especially, we're probably one of the most talented, probably the best and most talented roster as far as even having players on their team goes. Heading into this relegation tournament, grinded out like crazy, and we're absolutely, very destined and very motivated to want to qualify. Fortunately for them, it didn't happen. And to me, they do have 2 valuable players who, in my mind, will absolutely, at least in some ways, make an impact or have the potential to make an impact, being both Study and Apathy. Study is a fantastic player to me, to kind of provide a little bit of a similarity between him and another player. In some ways, kind of plays in a similar way to Zuma. Granted, they don't grab the same specialists, but Study is more of a roaming slayer. He's going to get kills down. He's a very clutch player. Study is, I don't want to say like a veteran, but he's been playing this game for a long time. Runner-up to Ghost for Envious back in the day. Study's been on championship-winning team in Denial, back with actually him and Zuma on the team, as well as like Attach and whatnot, even replays. So, I mean, these guys have had a lot of success. These guys have had, he's particular in himself, had a lot of success in the past. However, not being in stage 1 was a killer for Study. Study, like I said, is a great AR player, provides a lot of presence, and a lot of these teams who kind of lack an AR presence, without a doubt, could be looking at him. To me, Complexity is a roster who, without a doubt, could be looking at Study to be a potential fill-in, maybe even for Nameless. Apathy as well, incredible sub-slayer, back even Advanced Warfare. When I was talking about him, I was saying when Apathy is playing at his best, he is one of the best in the game whenever it comes down to that just in general slang raw talent that Apathy possesses. And I don't know what he does that gives him that type of talent, but just his reaction time, his overall ability, and his knowledge to play is absolutely incredible. And I think there's a couple things that Apathy can work on. I don't think he's, in general, like the smartest player, not taking anything away from him, but I think in some ways being behind a group of guys who can kind of lead him and maybe provide a little bit of that sense of like direction, without a doubt could work perfectly for him and Study as well. Maybe even a pair. Who knows what will happen. But those guys definitely, to me, are players that could potentially make a massive impact. A player like Merc, who's actually offered a spot on TK into the regular season. He's a leader. He's also a great AR player in his own regard. Provides a number of different opportunities to where he is a captain of a team. He's going to be the captain of a team. Well, he might actually be the captain. He has that captain-esque role where he knows what's going on. He wants to play. But, of course, Merc has announced that if he doesn't get on a Season 2 League team, he's most likely going to end up retiring, which is incredibly unfortunate. I hope that doesn't end up happening. I'll make, without a doubt, a video talking about that if that does end up occurring. Next team that we're moving on to is going to be Team Kaliber. Two players I'm looking at for Team Kaliber, without a doubt, are both Neslo and Gunjar. Similar to what Team Liquid provides Study in a player like Gunjar, and Apathy kind of like a player like Neslo. Neslo, to me, is probably the most important player when it comes down to TK. As far as their in-game communication, Neslo is constantly leading that. Neslo knows what he's doing. He wants to grind. He's probably one of the most dedicated and wanting to win, probably the most motivated players that I've ever met, ever talked to, ever heard, or ever seen play in my life. And just really is a positive player. Like I said, he's played and he's tried to go off of the TK lineup. He's went to Fear for a little bit of time. He even went to Rise for a short time as well, but primarily Fear. Even with Theory at a time, it really didn't have a whole lot of success, to be honest. In which case, he's tried to find players to play with, but he's just never had that kind of next level role. And I think Neslo, without a doubt, to be honest, could fill a role, maybe even on a roster like DT, kind of in place maybe of a player like Cinder, to kind of switch it up a little bit. I think Neslo would be a fantastic player like that, who could fill in that particular role. Will that happen? I don't know, but still, if he gets the opportunity, I guarantee he will at least highly consider it, if not already take it. Next player we're going to talk about is going to be Gunjar. Gunjar, to me, is a fantastic player. Let me actually check really quick, because I can go and give you guys his overall KD, I believe, for Stage 1, because I think he was probably one of the higher ones when it came down to the TK lineup. And let me actually check really quick. He actually had a 1.04. Neslo had a 0.96, Theory had a 0.88, and Sharp had a 0.86. Actually, Sharp kind of turned it up to the latter part of the season. He had like a 0.76 or something like that halfway through the season. So with that, you can already see a lot of his slaying ability. He primarily uses like a scythe when it comes down to regular respawns, and a glitch when it comes down to search and destroy. Guy is crazy. He's a great player. He's back to the ping jar back in Black Ops 2. It's not just on his, his internet, but he is still a great player when it comes down to online and LAN. He can definitely fill the roles of a player, like maybe even a roster like H2K, for example, or maybe even a lineup like Complexity, where they do need more of an AR player, more of a presence of a Slayer who can absolutely do that. And whenever you let Gunjar be a slaying presence, you maybe even have another AR to kind of complement him at times, without a doubt, he can put up some big numbers and potentially, at least in my opinion, to be one of the most guaranteed players to get on a season if players are looking for someone like him. Next team that we're looking at is going to be Cloud9 Eclipse, of course, a roster who did end up falling short in the relegation tournament. Roster of Dito, Silly, Assault, and Swarly. Two primary players I'm looking at from this team. You could really throw in three if you really wanted to. To me, are both Silly and Assault. I think Silly probably has the best chance of getting on a league team compared to any one of his teammates. I think Silly is a very, very good player, at least in my opinion, probably one of the best players that we have currently in the game right now. I think he's incredibly unnoticed, rocks more of an AR presence as well, kind of like a roaming AR Slayer. Very, very talented when it comes down to that role, at least in my opinion, of course. Him and Assault absolutely destroy when it comes down to the AR presence that they do provide. Assault, to me, is an incredible AR player. He's great with the Shiva. He's more of like a standard type of anchoring player like in Black Ops 2, type of style of an AR presence that kind of he brings. He is incredible. Assault is an absolutely incredible player. Not really many people know about him. He played for Justice back in Advanced Warfare alongside of Spacely, Kenny, and Envoy. I think they placed like top 5 or top 6 in the MLG World Finals. and even took down FaZe like UMG DC or something like that. So he's had some good moments, but he's just never had that next type of opportunity to really be noticed as, and really had that same potential and be noticed as. He's never really been as noticed, I think, as he deserves to be. Even as Silly as well. You know, Silly played for Isolation Empire. You know, even Silly kind of was brought up into this competitive scene, or even brought into it by Dito. Dito, you know, ended up finding himself. He found Silly. He also found Lamagod and Havoc. It's funny enough that Lamagod and Havoc actually qualified for this season, but, you know, unfortunately for Dito and Silly, they did not. But still, a fantastic roster in Isolation Empire throughout all of Advanced Warfare. Kind of a middle-of-the-pack, top 5, top 6 team, kind of similar to me as far as like an Elevate would go. But these guys are absolutely incredible. The C9 Eclipse roster was. I wish that they would have made it into the season. However, unfortunately, they did not. And Silly is a guy, without a doubt, who can trap numbers and hard points. He's fairly, what I know, pretty dedicated. He does have a little bit of a, you know, big emotion, so he can at times be a little bit hard to work with. But I think he would be a good roster. I think he would be a good addition to a roster. I think he's a fantastic player, great AR player. Like I said, he can fill the roles of maybe not a complexity, but he can fill the roles of someone like on an H2K lineup. And maybe even on an Envious, which I don't think would work as well. But if they do need an AR player in place of H, or maybe Slasher goes to more of an AR, they might need a sub player. Kind of just depends. Envious kind of like a team based on who they can provide or who they can pick up. You might need to switch roles around to make sure that, you know, player can come in and be more comfortable. So we'll see with how that happens and stuff. But I think, you know, Silly is without a doubt a player to be watching out for. And Dio really is also a great player to watch out for as well. And Sorali was a great objective player. But I don't know if he's necessarily as noticed or as recognized to a lot of the competitive scene. And I can also say this, a lot of these AR players, so I mentioned maybe even like a Goonjar, I know I mentioned, you know, Silly as well as even Assault, could work pretty well in Luminosity. Not saying that, not taking anything away from replays, but in some cases, if replays needs to be more freed up to kind of maybe be a roaming slur, maybe even be that roaming, or maybe that statue AR that you had in a player like Silly, that team is now a lot better, at least in my opinion. I think, honestly, the addition of Silly to a roster like Luminosity would be incredible for their overall slay. Maybe even Goonjar to that team as well would be absolutely fantastic, because you have two amazing sub-slayers, at times, at least for John, but two incredible sub-slayers, really rushing out slayers in both John and Saints. So, to me, even adding another slayer onto that, being whether it's Silly, being whether it's Goonjar, being whether it's even Study, would be incredible. I think Luminosity has not a big gap, but an easy you know, role that could be fulfilled by any of these guys who I've mentioned who are AR players primarily. Now, the last roster that I'm going to bring up is going to be CLG. CLG, to me, of course, did end up finishing into the regular season as the last place team, coming in 12th with a 6-16 record. You know, to me, was a fairly good team throughout the season, but just really did not have that opportunity where they turned it up. They didn't have that next level where they you know, had a fantastic run. But to me, their only wins came against TK, they won against TSM, they won against DT, H2K, Cole, and a struggling Envious squad. So, to me, players I'm looking out for if you are on CLG, if you're watching, you know, the CLG team from, you know, more of an outside perspective, players you're watching out for, potentially a player like Accuracy. You know, he's also a great roaming AR slayer, as much of these guys are who I mentioned previously. Methods, who had the highest KD for the CLG team and a 1.05. That's really good. Honestly, that's an incredible type of KD for the struggling sense that CLG had. The fact that he's still going positive and had the, you know, the great run that he did have is impressive to mention. You know, he was also the captain of the CLG team. CLG went, you know, throughout constant roster changes, substituting Complex for Perplexed, and also dropping BL Fire for Accuracy. So these guys, and honestly, Methods is no stranger to roster changes, and would not be at all strange to join another team, because he's used to that sense of having a constant roster change, or even having the dwindle of having a struggling roster. And I guarantee that any of these guys don't want to have to experience something like that, you know, ever again. I think Felony is also a great player to bring up as well. I think there was one series that I got to watch him play, which was at Unity, South Carolina, and Felony absolutely went off. I have never seen anyone that it was on like one map, but he was like doing incredible things. That if he can tap into that type of ability that I saw him play with, you know, being like a sub player, if he can tap into that potential and play like that at a consistent basis, I guarantee you there is no doubt in my mind that Felony could be on a team. But there is at times where Felony can be a tad streaky, and I say a tad streaky because there's like a thin line where you could be a consistent player. It's hard to kind of remain in a consistent roles, but Felony is one of those guys who could be here, but at times can start to lack off a little bit. He can be one of those guys who can kind of start to not slack off, but in some ways can kind of get down a little bit. And a lot of the times, to me, when I watch the CLG team struggle, there wasn't a time where I was seeing Felony kind of rise above the ranks and be one of those guys who was leading the team, or at least trying to be, maybe even keeping and capitalizing on their mistakes. It was just like kind of Felony was also kind of there as well. So in my mind, I think Felony without a doubt could be a player to watch out for. No offense to at all to Perplex, but being more of an objective style role, not having a very good performance, I guess you could say, in the Call of Duty World League. I don't think that he's going to be a player to be looking out for, but still. Moving on, some others that I can mention who weren't on, of course, these Challenger League teams for Season 1 are players like BLFire. BLFire, a great AR, kind of transitioned when he was on Cream for a short time to more of an active camo type of, objective style player. He did end up getting released and wasn't able to compete. Proofy, I don't even know if Proofy's still trying to play competitively, but he's a great AR player. Was for a short time on TSM / Rush / question mark. He had some good moments, and I don't know what's really going on with Proofy. I hope he does end up kind of continuing on in his career. A player like Imbos. Imbos tweeted out free agent. He made a video not too long ago talking about how he wants to play Call of Duty. If for those who don't know, actually for relegation, Gunjar wasn't able to show up due to having some issues with traveling. He's not going to go into that right now, but he did have some issues with traveling. And Nibbles ended up having to fill in for TK, which case he actually played fairly well. He actually had an AR in his hands, which is not at all Imbos-esque. He played fairly well in Search and Destroy, and he had a pretty good performance in the respawns. So to me, Imbos, without a doubt, based on one LAN and based on one particular series of a best of 7, looked great, but maybe if they do try to, in some ways, try him out, get him in some money 8s, get him into practicing more, he could, without a doubt, be a player to watch out for. Imbos for a short time, was obviously on Nation heading into the qualifiers for Season 1. Didn't really work out for him. Played alongside players like Study as well, and didn't really have the best performance, but still had some good moments. Imbos, by far, to me, Threat Advanced Warfare was very underrated. Granted, he didn't have the best KD, but he was always setting up his teammates for success. Maybe if he's playing more of an objective role back again and someone needs him, based on his slang presence that he showed for TK, maybe he could be one of those players who sets his teammates up for success and also provides a good slaying presence. He could be a very overall solid player to look out for. It's just something to kind of mention. I do have players like Khalifa. I have players like Sinful mentioned as well. Great younger players, not younger players, but players who aren't as well known right now in the scene, who I think could be good additions. I could throw in Baker, I could throw in players like Cyborg. A lot of great younger players who I think honestly have a good potential to be guys who could, fill on these roles pretty well, but based on where they kind of rank in the competitive players right now, I don't think it's going to be as likely, but like I said, it could happen, but I'm not really going to talk about them for too long. And yeah, that's kind of like the list that I have for right now, guys. Those are the teams and the players who I think that could cause a couple changes, and I'll go and show you guys a really quick graphic of the players who I think are teams and players we're looking out for right now. I do have Elevate Facento, I have Complexity Nameless, I have DT Sender and Killa, I have Luminosity Replays and Spacely, Fizzerp from H2K, Aches and Slasher from Envious, and Enable from FaZe and Ivy from TSM. Really quickly, as I show you guys this is not a list that I'm saying these guys are going to be involved with Rostermania. This is not a list where I'm saying these guys who are slacking, who I think need to be involved with it. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm saying that if changes do arise, these are most likely the pool of players who potentially will be involved unless a player wants to leave an organization, keeping that in mind. So that could be anyone. So, I'm just saying, say that Parasite wants to leave Complexity, regardless of Complexity being had with Parasite. Say he wants to leave and Complexity's like, okay, this guy's just not wanting to play for us anymore, let's trade him. So, I could put anyone on this list that I want to, but based on what I compiled, based on the analysis that I've done for the season, and based on what I've seen on Reddit, Twitter, conversations on LAN, conversations online, and so on and so forth, the streams that I've watched, this is the list that I've comprised. So I'm not really going to go into depth with this. I kind of talked about the players who could fill a couple of these roles. It could potentially be on some of these league teams, and that can kind of be left up to you. I do have Envy. Like I said, I do have those guys mentioned. I think there could be a lot of guys from Envy mentioned on this list. And if everyone on this list, though, I think FaZe or Enable being on FaZe is probably one of the less likely things to happen. However, I did put them on that list because honestly, I really didn't know who to put up there. I think you could put either Clayster or Enable up there right now, but I don't think you can really relate Clayster's last lane performance to be something to drop him over, especially because he wasn't having the most healthiest of events, to say the least. So let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think about who I've talked about? Do you think of anyone else, or maybe even adding on to what I've said about some of these players who could potentially be into Season 2? Because Rostermania is getting ready to kick off. Be fully expecting to have uploads for myself, constantly going over what has happened with Rostermania and what is to come with Rostermania as time does go on. So that will do it for this video, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. I hope you guys did enjoy at least some of the graphics that I made. I made some graphics. Probably the graphics took a lot longer than it did to me even to really prepare for this video. Make sure to stay tuned to my YouTube for a lot of the roster changes that will be going down very, very shortly. I hope you guys did enjoy the video yet again, and I will see you all later. Have a fantastic day. Until next time, peace out.